Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Richard Jones. I work for the Railway Industry Association, so RIA, as we're going to refer to it today. And I'm pleased to welcome you to this week's series of webinars on the Digital Railway Programme, perhaps the most significant engineering programme in the industry over the next 20 years. Now, I know that HS2 gets all the headlines. Okay, it's the flagship, isn't it? But I'd argue that digital railway is actually more important to the future of our railway. Now, I need to say here that RIA is not the sole contributor to these events. They're organised in conjunction with Network Rail and with the UK Rail Research and Innovation Ukraine, and they're supported by Network Rail, which we're very grateful for. And of course, I want to thank all our speakers today, without whom none of this would be possible. So we've got a week of webinars here, each day at 2 p.m. And what I want to do is just give you a quick overview of what we've actually got planned. So today we're going to be looking at an overview of the Digital Railway Programme. Tomorrow, so that's Tuesday, we'll be looking at the first rollout projects for both the rolling stock and for the infrastructure as well. On Wednesday, we'll be looking into the longer term. As I said, this is a 20-year programme, and there is a plan for that. We're going to look at that and all the things that contribute to it, look at issues like how the work is paced out over that time, and developing the skills that we need as an industry to address this programme. Thursday is a day to focus on innovation, and this is a joint event with our Unlocking Innovation programme. So we're going to look at the things on Thursday that are already happening in terms of innovation, and some of the really exciting R&D that's going on between the universities and suppliers and Network Rail to drive that future innovation. Like I say, I think a really exciting and interesting day on Thursday. Friday, the practicality of supply chain building. We'll look at the opportunities, particularly for SMEs in the programme. We'll actually hear from an SME that's won some really good quality work within the programme already. And in fact, we'll be hearing a bit each day because we'll be getting some elevator pitches as well from SMEs. They'll be taking a few minutes to tell us about what they're doing that's in innovation, in and around the project, and also supporting innovation. So for today then, it's a year since our last Digital Railway Conference at Birmingham University, and so much has happened since then. Network Rail is very substantially reorganised to better focus on moving passengers and freight. There are now 5 regions and 14 routes with devolved responsibilities, and the first major contracts for delivering the first digital railway projects as part of the programme have been placed. One of these significant changes is the formation of a Network Services Directorate. We're very pleased to have the Group Director of Network Services, Nick King, to bring us up to speed on these changes. So can I hand over to you, please, Nick? Can't see you at the moment. Great, there we are. So Nick, I'm handing over to you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nick King, as just introduced. I'm the Group Director for Network Services. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to speak to you today. And as I was just said, a lot has changed since you met up in Birmingham a little over a year ago. And I would like to use this opportunity to bring you up to speed on our transformation programme, putting passengers and freight users first. I'm also going to take you on a whistle-stop tour of Network Services and tell you a little bit about our 6 pillars. Then I'm going to focus on digital data-driven railway, because within Network Rail, many of those capabilities and elements required to deliver a digital So the Putting Passengers and Freight First programme is new, an exciting chapter in Network Rail's evolution. You'll have to bear with me, the slides are just going slightly out of sync. So the one I want you to have is just about to appear. There's quite a delay anyway. So the Putting Passenger First programme is a new and exciting chapter. It is supporting our ambition to have the skills, culture and focus to put passengers and freight users at the core of absolutely everything we do. Key to this transformation is real devolution to regional businesses with empowered leaders. It is about building stronger, devolved businesses that are aligned to the political and economic geographies which we believe is vital to ensuring that investment meets the needs of local stakeholders and customers. We are also bringing our people closer to those we serve. Phase 1 of putting passengers and freight users first was completed in September last year. Phase 2 started just after that, which is an obvious statement, I apologise. And in Phase 1, we set up 5 regions and we also established network services. Phase 2, which was completed in November, saw many teams starting to transfer into the new regions, into network services, and into the Chief Financial Officer's Directorate. And last week, we completed the final phase of what we are doing with the national-led changes, and now we're ready to go. So this means that all the elements of the targeted operating model are in place. Regions, services, and functions are now going to implement their local changes to achieve their final operating model at our own paces. And we would expect that the PPF structural changes will all be complete by the end of the year. We have also introduced a new streamlined scorecard that now measures what matters most to those that Network Rail serves. It is based on the 4 key elements of our vision, which are, on the side of passengers and freight users, easy to engage with, an efficient and dependable partner, a company people are proud to work for, and an instinctive industry leader. Network Services was created in June last year as a direct response to the Putting Passenger and Freight First programme. Since forming last year, the team has grown from something like 180 to over 1,500 people today. We hit a huge milestone last week when we welcomed over 300 colleagues from safety, technical and engineering, known better in the industry as what was STE, and infrastructure projects. Network Services exists to support the routes, regions, and the external stakeholders and functions. It puts operational excellence, passengers, and freight at the heart of the business. It's the first time in several years that operations is again at the top table of Network Rail. We provide operational, freight, telecoms, and technical expertise, as well as delivering national programs and initiatives that will enable us to deliver for our passengers and freight users. In essence, we partner with the routes and regions in order to serve our passengers and freight users. We provide expertise and strategic direction for operations and performance management. We deliver national programs, providing capabilities and tools to enable operational and performance benefits to routes, regions, and the wider industry. We provide a portfolio of specialist technical and telecom services which enable regions, operations, and asset management. And we deliver this in a way which empowers our staff to be empowered. Our priorities are to deliver operational performance in a safe and sustainable way. We exist to support the routes and regions to deliver the railway that is on the side of passengers and freight users, with the trains that turn up on time at their destination. We will lead the business on relationship management, ensuring we are easy to engage with and a dependable partner, whilst delivering high-performing technical and operational services to all our customers. As a new service, our priority is to build a high-performing, empowered, engaged, and cohesive team. Our strategy focuses on creating a reliable and high-performing railway that is fit for the future. And finally, value for money is key to absolutely everything that Network Services does. Our programs, services, and operations must deliver financial value to all stakeholders. The Network Services team is shaped around 6 pillars. I'm sorry, I've just got myself in front. You'll have to bear with me, team. We've gone one slide too many. So the Network Services is based around 6 pillars. The first one of those is network strategy and operations. Okay, we're on the right slide now. Our network strategy and operations teams leads the development of the network operating strategy by directing the development and the implementation of the national operational railway strategy. And that's on behalf of the wider business, the regions, the routes, and the whole industry. The network passenger and customer experience team will lead and champion the passenger focus for Network Rail, and they will do this through a passenger centre of excellence. They will work collaboratively with the regions, routes and functions to manage the passenger interface with customers and to drive improvement and innovation. The freight team champions our freight customers and users by managing the national relationship to deliver an outstanding, innovative and value for money service. They will provide national and industry focus for freight stakeholders, driving the business to achieve world-class levels of service. And finally, they will lead activities across the regions and the routes to meet the needs of freight customers and provide expert guidance in relation to all freight matters. Network Rail Telecoms, NRT, provides a national telecommunications capability that enables the safe, reliable and efficient operation of the railway. NRT are accountable for managing, for example, the 20,000 miles of optic fibre, as well as driving the telecoms strategy and being a centre for excellence of knowledge and skills. Operational programme delivery leads and directs the delivery of the network-wide programmes to meet our operational, technical and strategic operations and objectives to the wider industry. The team will develop and lead a professional program management organization so we can deliver initiatives to time, to cost and quality, and more importantly, to realize the benefits that the operating railway needs to see. Technical services provides strategic direction, leadership and assurance for specialist engineering, asset management, safety, environmental services within network services. As mentioned at the start, a lot has changed since the Digital Rail Conference of last year in Birmingham. Network services come a long way in the same time. So where does that put us today, digitally speaking? The big news is that last week we announced a £350 million investment in delivering digital railway to the southern part of the East Coast Main Line, as mentioned earlier. But this huge cash injection is on top of the 1.2 billion already earmarked to upgrade one of the country's most important rail arteries. Many activities have been affected by COVID-19, most of them adversely, and the modernising train control and train service delivery is actually no exception. But the announcement last week spoke about accelerating the momentum because of the crisis. It's now needed more than ever as part of the recovery from this monumental disruption to our lives and our industry. Even more interesting was the explicit commitment by the government to the end goal of making what is still fairly novel technology business as usual across the whole network. As Grant Shapps said last week, this is just the beginning. In time, we will digitalize signalling right across the country to make good on our promises of a better reliable and punctuality for passengers. So I believe our new structure and working closely with our suppliers will be instrumental in delivering this for the country. Network Services has a key accountability to unlock the innovation needed to deliver the benefits of digital signalling and its complementary technologies for our passengers and our freight customers. We have also signed an MOU with the DfT for the long-term deployment plan. This is a milestone in the investment in both rolling stock and the scheme development to progress digital development. The MOU clearly defines the responsibilities between the different parties to make sure that the train and infrastructure fitment remains closely knitted, and it also shows commitment to the progress from us all towards the rail sector deal. I'd like to shine a light though on some of the other things that are going on in the industry at the moment. We're working on a cross-industry 10-point plan to manage trespasser and fatalities across the rail network. There is a lot of activity going on across the industry to predict, prevent, respond and recover from incidents, and improvements have been made in many areas. The objective of the plan, though, is to provide industry-wide improvements by predicting and preventing incidents from occurring. That needs to be done through data-driven, proactive use of resources and the implementation of very latest AI concepts. And then we need to respond and recover from incidents quickly and effectively through improved response strategies and improved industry collaboration. In 2019-20, there were over 16,000 recorded TRESPA incidents, which caused over 1 million delay minutes and cost Network Rail alone £67 million. Now, data everywhere and not a drop to use. That is a direct quote from a track maintenance engineer on our western route when asked how he was going to use data to make maintenance decisions. This has been the frustration of engineers, technicians and planners for years. They have been overwhelmed with data, and that has not been captured, stored or exploited in a coordinated, intelligent way that would enable them to make decisions. We need to change this. In the last few years, we have seen improvements in the capturing of data, and this is being driven by the Intelligent Infrastructure Programme within Network Services. Intelligent infrastructure is designing tools and capabilities that will help maintenance teams carry out the right maintenance in the right place at the right time. So why is this critical? Well, before COVID-19, passenger numbers had doubled in the last 25 years to more than 1.8 billion journeys in 2018-19. Track utilisation is 60% higher in Britain than in the EU average. 70% of delays are down to knock-on effects caused by congestion following asset faults. Britain's network forces operators to run freight, intercity and commuter trains on the same tracks. To meet these challenges, maintenance regimes must shift from reactive fix-on failure to proactive, predictive and preventing regimes. We must arm ourselves with up-to-date data that tells them what assets are doing. Through a suite of web-based decision support tools across track, signalling, electrical power and civils, including algorithmic data that pinpoints when a failure or fault is going to occur, is enabling our teams to undertake risk-based maintenance. Let's not forget the safety benefits, though. We can avoid sending teams out for repeat or unnecessary work, as well as ensuring we use our engineering skills and judgment on work that will keep the network moving safely. These predictive decision support capabilities are being enhanced by the development of automated network monitoring, advanced data analytics, and also aerial surveys. In many respects, we're enabling and introducing the digital, data-driven engineers of the future. As the use of reliability-centered maintenance matures, the applications of remote condition monitoring will increase, and then existing data streams can be collated into decision support, intelligent dashboards, and the transition to risk-based maintenance will be realized. If we are to meet these challenges of the railway, we must drive further data capability that allows engineers to know where assets are, how they are behaving, and how they are degrading. In essence, we need an intelligent infrastructure that doesn't simply react, it anticipates. In July 2019, Network Rail formed the Safety Task Force to improve track worker safety following the stubbornly higher near-miss statistics of our network. The Margam tragedy in South Wales, where colleagues Gareth and Michael were struck by a train, was a stark reminder that more needs to be done to protect track workers. This was reinforced by the tragic death of Aidan on track in Northamptonshire earlier this year, and our thoughts are with their families and friends through these very difficult times. In normal times, over 10,000 colleagues work on or near the track every day. The UK rail network is amongst the safest in the world, but there is much more for us to do, and it's not just Network Rail issue. We intend to improve safety for everyone who works on the track. The no-brainer question here is, what are we doing to improve track safety worker? Firstly, we need to use intelligent infrastructure and remote monitoring techniques to reduce the need for people to access operational tracks wherever possible. When it comes to routine maintenance and inspections, we're doing more to organise this into line blockages and possessions to keep people off the open lines. We're also replacing track inspections with drone flights and other intelligent infrastructure innovations. COVID-19 has forced us to sharpen our focus on the best and safest way to get tasks done. In the future, we need to make more use of train-borne technology. To do this, we need the continued support of the DFT and of operators and of your innovation. We will continue to review something in the region of 24 million annual maintenance tasks, and we need to streamline and simplify those as best as we can. Where people have to go on track, though, we will plan work into line blockages and possessions, and therefore eliminate the unassisted lookout working, which you can see on the slide on your screen. Another key development is to make better use of the white space in the schedules for blockages. We are keen to exploit technologies that help model and unlock the white space in the schedules, which will be a game changer in the way we operate. We're also exploiting new technologies such as body-worn warning systems, which alert the wearer when they step out of the safety zone and onto the track. This is just a small glimpse into the start of the exciting possibilities we're pursuing. They are showing real promise, and their realization will bring life-saving benefits to the industry. And for that reason, we need to keep seeking out tools, technologies, and get your support in their development and implementation. The Safety Task Force exists to improve the safety of everyone working on the rail network, not just Network Rail. We are looking for ideas and inputs from across the industry, and RIA has an important role to play in that. I want to articulate, though, some of the things that are on our mind at the moment, resonating in our brains, so to speak. This is likely to raise more questions than answers, though. I'll kick off with the following question. Do we as an industry regard ourselves as being successful in introducing new technology? I'm going to say no. So where are we going wrong? The railway has been good at implementing new technologies. In 1960, the last mainline UK steam locomotive was built. In the same decade, the Victoria Line was opened with automatic train operation. TOPS, which was introduced into British Rail in the 60s as well, for the management of locomotives and wagons. And then a little later, in the 70s and the 80s, TRUSS was introduced. Over the past 8 years, we have worked hard together with key suppliers to deliver traffic management. Whilst we have succeeded in getting these products into the operational environment, we haven't seen the impact we want, and the operating rail needs to work successfully. This is holding us back because the success of these systems is crucial to improving both the safety and the performance. It's a 2-for-1 deal. So, what are the main issues holding us back? Well, firstly, there is no clear owner of the legacy systems in the industry. TOPS and TRUSS have been brilliant, but I am sorry to say that they've had their day. And what's even more frustrating is that their very presence is deterring the development of other systems. These systems do not work using modern data formats, so it's impossible to interrogate them effectively with modern day language and computing power. The industry desperately needs clear guidelines for data format for future systems, as well as readily accessible data, a readily accessible digital twin, so to speak, of the network. This will allow the movement of trains and the format and protocols to allow this data to be shared in real time. Traditionally, computing and engineering and operations were two completely different things. TOPS and TRUSS are operational systems where the exact location of the assets is not required. Engineering systems were designed to allow fault mode and effect analysis. I don't mean to go on a technical tangent, that there hasn't been sufficient industry leadership to act in this area. Network Services, though, is prepared and will address this gap. And while I have you all together today in one virtual room, here's a problem statement. Is there a system that we can use to query how a track circuit is used for either the running of trains or for maintenance purposes? Right now, I don't believe there is one. And if we use that as an example of what role Network Services is to play, we need to solve those problems. First and foremost, we will take an industry approach. We will have the skill set and the mandate to ensure that the supply chain, operators, engineering specialists, network rail operations and train planning skills are all in one team. The collective collaboration approach wins every time. It means safety is integrated into the team at the beginning. We provide the business cases for better technology and the way of working, including new digital and signalling systems. We will specify what is needed by the industry in collaboration, and then we will deliver that specification on behalf of the industry. Network Services wants to draw the silos together so that the industry works with common sets of data and assumptions. Our aim is to specify what is needed from a network model and unlock the latest technologies in operational and engineering thinking. We want to deliver the latest generation in train planning and the link to traffic management, particularly in the world of the plan and the replan, as well as ensuring that the human-machine interfaces are friendly enough to ensure amendments are captured in real time. No technology can work if it's not kept up to date. We want to work with the supply chain to understand how the latest technologies can benefit the industry. Intelligent infrastructure has ambitious goals for network rail asset management, and this should allow us to share good practice with the rest of the industry. We need to get better at measuring performance through better monitoring of the system at track circuit level and the use of the signalling system. Then we'll be able to determine more accurately capacity and performance based on the signal aspect actually seen by the driver. Of course, we'll lose time on a single yellow, but how much should we be losing? There are new technologies emerging all the time. How do you show us to take advantage of them? How can we work together to develop and bring them to market? But we can't be naive and become a funder of all innovation. For instance, machine learning has promised much, but has not really delivered a huge amount for the rail industry. It is one thing to match data in one system and display it in another, such as a traffic management system. But how do we get true integration so that the outputs from the one decision become the inputs for another, particularly when the first system is dependent upon the inputs from the second to make its decision in the first place? What technologies are available to help us solve such data precedence issues? Recurrent neural networks. How do we take advantage of technologies that help us understand passengers and their likely behavior on the network? How might neural network programming help us understand how to better recover the network following disruption? How might we take advantage of AI to unlock new ways of problem solving in real time? I realize there's a lot of what I've just said has been a sequence of questions, many of them technical, with little or no answer. But that's the point. We have all these burning questions and problems, and I've only scraped the surface today. But there must also be solutions waiting to be discovered. The formation of Network Services is important, not just in Network Rail, but for the rail industry as a whole. Network Rail can provide a stable foundation for encouraging and implementing new technology. We can lead on specifying industry solutions. We can provide accountability for new data formats and specifications for network models. And we are itching to use the latest technologies to maximize the potential of the new digital system. There are plenty of new technologies that we haven't yet started to investigate or even know they exist. Sure, some of them won't work or be fit for purpose, but you can't be scared of failing. We need to learn to fail fast and move on. We have a long way to go, but COVID-19 has provided all of us with an opportunity to look at the railway from a new mountaintop. It's the perfect time to develop, implement and deploy real, not token innovation. I want us to work together to use our collective capabilities to find new ones, even if they're outside of the traditional rail-centric world, to make our railway the absolute best it can be for our passengers and our freight users, our people and the entire industry. Thank you for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Nick. I can tell you there are 500 people out there applauding what you've just said. That clarity of communication about where we're going is the kind of leadership we absolutely need. And I can tell you that the supply chain is absolutely behind you. There's so many people in the supply chain that have been biting their own arms off with frustration, waiting for today. So brilliant. Let's crack on with it.
Thank you, Richard.
About data and about silos. In fact, data is one of the best way of getting across the silos in the industries, across the industry. And we've been talking about that for a while. You mentioned the long-term delivery program and also the rail sector deal. We'll be talking about these very important initiatives on Wednesday. My colleague David Clark, RIA's Technical Director, is chairing on Wednesday. Just to remind everyone that we've got a panel Q&A for the last 15 minutes or so of our time today, and that you can all ask questions by going to the grey dialog box at typically the right-hand corner of your screen. You've got a question box there. If you tick the square box on the questions bar, then that will open out and you get a space where you can ask questions and so on. And also to say that you'll be able to download the slides later on during the presentations from GoToWebinar. They'll also be on the RIA website in a day or so, and in 24 hours you'll get a download link to download a recording of the whole event. Now, Nick has hammered home that all this is about moving people and freight as efficiently as possible. And our next speaker is from the train operator on the East Coast Main Line route, the first to deploy the digital railway approach. Paul Boyle is head of deployment at London North Eastern Railway, and he's going to talk about the benefits to railway users as he sees it. So Paul Boyle, can I hand over to you, Paul? You want to bring your camera up, please? Great.
There we go.
Over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Richard. And yeah, I'd like to just take you through a presentation today on how important the East Coast Digital Programme is to us as an operator on the East Coast Main Line, LNER. For a number of years, we've been identifying the benefits of ETCS and the difference that it would make to the East Coast Main Line. Many on the webinar today will be aware of the history and the challenge that we've had in obtaining the funding and business cases to support the rollout. Fortunately, the announcements in the last week by the Transport Secretary are absolutely fantastic, and they let us progress on the journey for the East Coast Main Line, which is such an important route for customers of passenger and freight. So what we wanted to do and what I wanted to take you through today is really just some of the highlights in the benefits as we see them as a train operator. So what we did, we created some typical scenarios on our driving simulators. We have the Azuma train model and the actual network from King's Cross to Peterborough is modelled within the simulator. And what we wanted to do was look at how we look at some typical situations and what would the future operating reality be and the benefits it would bring. So how it compares ETCS against typical, and this was a really important thing that we wanted to understand, but also demonstrate to our key stakeholders and articulate this is the difference that it can make. The list of scenarios that we selected were very typical situations that we see daily. So you can see we've got an emergency speed restriction, the approach to a stop signal, the late end of authority or late signal clearance, and a late end of authority associated with a level crossing, approach controls at Huntingdon, where you go from fast to slow line routing, and a train detection failure. And they're very typical situations. And one of the things I'd just like to stress in the results that you'll see is we did not use an optimized ETCS layout. We simply had train detection like for like, and so the difference was the ability for the driver to understand how the movement authority had changed, and that's really important. The other caveat I would put is that they were not practiced, the test runs, and they were not, we didn't skirt any braking curves. We used indication as it should be and good policy driving associated with ETCS. So what you see here is the graph for an emergency speed restriction, and what you can see is the red lines. The solid line is they're conventional, and the dashed line is conventional in poor visibility. The blue lines and blue dashed line are ETCS. You can see very clearly that the big variation that there is in driving techniques here in conventional compared to that consistent approach and speed supervision that the ETCS provided. And you can see how that has extended the speed restriction. Very typical situation. And I think it really echoes also into the point that Nick made in, track worker safety associated with laying out a speed restriction is high risk today. People have to go trackside. This was the approach to the stop signal. Again, you can see that big variation in driving technique that there is for conventional compared to that constant profile that the ETCS delivers. Again, this was following typical policies of driving to get the train under control on conventional signalling. What did them results look like? So we can see here that within the emergency speed restriction, we got a time saving of between 17 and 24 seconds. That obviously made makes a big difference when you start to look at some of the sub-threshold minutes. The other thing I'd like to emphasize is the difference that there is in variation in driving. So you look between 3 and 4 seconds in ETCS, but up to 43 seconds in conventional signalling. And scenario B, which was a closed marker, which is an approach to a stop signal, again, a massive variation on conventional, and to within 1 second of accuracy of all of the drivers operating them tests, compared to up to 53 seconds with conventional. This was the late end of authority, late signal clearance. Again, something we see, typically we see probably 6,000-7,000 of these a period, and they're the ones that are recorded in our systems, let alone the ones that we don't see. As we can see this variability on the conventional driving and low visibility. You can see that we're right down to 10 mph until you can physically see the signal. In ETCS, as soon as the movement authority could be released, you're then back on the profile to line speed. This brings such a level of accuracy that can actually be a planned event in the timetable and schedule, something we just could not achieve on today's timetable planning rules, but also the requirements of the signaller. This is, again, late end of authority. This is Everton level crossing on the East Coast Main Line, and yeah, very typical situation where you get your 2 yellows, 1 yellow round the corner, and it's green, and it's generally associated with level crossing use. This again gives a level of accuracy and predictability that this can be a planned event for it to happen. So we can start to address things such as level crossing closure times, which also impacts on safety, but also third-party safety. lets us play different tunes with the signalling and the planning systems. And this was the results of them two scenarios. So we can see we get very close now towards 2 minutes of benefit in low visibility for that scenario. And likewise, for the level crossing lake clearance, 2 minutes 25 seconds, but even in good visibility, we're getting close to 40 seconds. You think of the infrastructure programs that we have to put together and the millions of pounds that we spend to get a minute journey time benefit. This was approach control to Huntingdon, so train being routed from fast to slow, and the limitations that we currently have in how we control that movement, where the train needs to be brought under control to ensure that we don't overspeed through the switch from fast to slow line. That means the driver encounters restrictive signals, and that's the resultant profile that we get for that scenario. ETCS, we can see that the profile is allowed and permits the train to work close to the line speed and then brake towards the speed for the switch. This is train detection failures. This is a track circuit failure where under conventional, we're brought to a stand, we go through a communication protocol where the driver then gets authorised to pass the signal at danger, and then the driver then proceeds unsupervised in accordance with the rules associated with that. In ETCS, the system can give us an on-site authority which allows us to work forward and continue on without stopping in a degraded mode. And them two scenarios give you 58 seconds for good visibility associated with that approach release. And as you can see there, over 4 minutes benefit compared to a track circuit failure associated with today's conventional signalling. Again, look at the variation in driving technique associated with them. Over 1 minute compared to 1 second tolerance between the drivers associated with them tests. And likewise, within the ETCS, the train detection failure gave very minor variation compared to the conventional. So this is the summary of them impacts and the benefits associated with them performance issues. These were very headline. When we looked at some scenarios to use, these were really just the tip of the iceberg. There wasn't any operational scenarios that we could think of where you didn't get a net benefit in either time saving or safety or a combination of them both. And we didn't pick the worst case scenario for this. We could have modelled something that gave a lot higher result, but those in the know would have spotted that and say, oh, you've over-egged the results. So these were very typical situations and very typical things for the East Coast, modelled on the East Coast. So what can it mean to us, an operator like LNER? Well, a typical period sees roughly 44,000 unattributed subthreshold delays minutes per period for our business. And they are the 1 and 2 minute type incidents that make up subthreshold delay, and each of them add to roughly about 11 minutes per incident per train that we operate. By Huntingdon, our right time falls off the cliff. We can see there we are down to 30%, and this is our Northeast service, our Newcastle service, but this could have been the Leeds services, the Anglo-Scott. They've got a very similar profile, and as you can see, we never ever recover that again. But our PPM line, the red line at the top, we can see that maintains that 0 to 10, and we squeeze in at PPM and we give ourselves a pat on the back. But our right time performance, which is all made up of this subthreshold delay, never ever recovers. So this is what we feel our right time performance on the East Coast Main Line could be like with ETCS, where we reduce the impact of them sub-threshold type incidents. They will still occur, but we will the impact will not be as heavy as it is today under conventional, and we see that our right time should be very close to our profile for PPM. But one of the most important elements of this is, we've talked about the technology and what it can deliver, is actually how do we deliver the industry change associated with the system. And through the East Coast Digital Programme, part of my role is to lead on the industry change and make sure that we're doing the right things with end users, but also developing the systems to meet end user needs. So two things that are really embedded in our programme. We can see there we've got the top one is ECD principle, the tranche approach to benefits, and it's embedding the change is expected to take 3 times more effort and time than the technology. And then one of our critical success factors being change enabled. This ECDP is a change programme with people at its core and not technology, which will deliver limited benefit on its own. It is the implementation of change across multiple organisations that will unlock the potential of the technology. It's firmly rooted in our DNA within the programme. We are integrating the industry like never before. This is a snapshot of what our programme looks like and the businesses associated with it and partners. As you can see, it touches on all areas of the industry. One of the areas that I'm responsible for as part of the programme leadership team is that industry change piece. So how we will deliver the change is we've got a series of business change managers in the green box. They are associated with every duty holder on the East Coast Main Line and all of the partners and delivery partners that will support us in delivering the technology. And one of the key elements of this is we've established an operational readiness group at the top, and that is a strategic group where the technology partners and the operators and end users come together. And reporting into that is a user design working group. And again, this is where we bring every stakeholder who's responsible as an end user, a driver, signaller, and trade unions into the area where we look at the specification, the design, development, and validation, testing, and the operational acceptance, and how we then link across into design authorities, industry standards, assurance and safety, and technology partners. So this is really about bringing the technical capability together with the end users and making what we deliver is a user-centric design process for all of the users. Okay, so that's all from me, and say thank you, and we look forward to any questions, and hopefully it's give you an insight into not only how we see the benefits that the East Coast Digital Programme will bring the operators, but also how we will firmly establish the industry change process that supports using that technology and systems.
Thank you so much, Paul. That's a really, really good practical view. It's a case study of a lot of the things that Nick talked about. You talked, about this. This is a really good piece of modelling and simulation work. We're going to go on Thursday to look at the grander scale of this, the work that Birmingham University is doing with Network Rail and with Thales, creating a digital twin. Absolutely key stuff. And I think there's a real piece of wisdom in there as well, Paul, about the fact that change management, that's changing the processes and the people and the way we do things, that's 3 times harder than changing the technology, which is not simple in itself. So I think that's a real piece of wisdom to take away. And certainly for technical people, they've always got to remember that, you know, the job isn't finished when you've just implemented the technology. It's actually embedding it by changing the processes. And I really like that you've taken that right down to the end user, because at the end of the day, we're giving those people to do a tool to do a job with. You know, if we
absolutely.
They're going to use this fabulous tool for just banging themselves on the foot with, you know, we're not going to get the results. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Everybody, do please keep the questions coming. I can see they're flowing a bit now, but give us lots to choose from. We're looking for common themes towards the end there. Now, every mega project has a number of aspects to it. 2 vital ones are the program management and the technical assurance. And to handle that second challenge, Network Rail has, over the last couple of years now, set up a Digital Railway Systems Authority. The person who's absolutely shepherded that into existence and been instrumental in bringing it about is Andrew Simmons, the Chief Systems Engineer at Network Rail. So I'm going to hand you over to Andrew Simmons. Well, I would do if I could see you, Andrew. Excellent. There you are. Fantastic. So, Andrew, can I hand over to you now, please?
Yep, sure. Hello, everybody. My name's Andrew Simmons. As I say, I'm the Chief Systems Engineer for the Digital Railway Programme, and in fact, for the System Authority. I'm going to take you through a development process that we've been on in developing the System Authority and how it fits with other areas within Network Rail as they evolve, as Nick has mentioned, through the PPFF development works. So just sort of hopefully seeing continuity here with what Paul and Nick has mentioned first. These are the components that we typically consider as being necessary for a future command, control and signalling system. And you can see there at the very top there, industry skills, capabilities and business change is really key to all of this. Then we do have obviously what we're looking at is safe separation for train systems, which we see at the moment as ETCS, traffic management and reliability growth. So going back to what Nick said about data, making sure we've got the right data to be able to manage our traffic accordingly and hopefully be proactive in understanding where the system has issues and fixing them before they actually cause a major impact to the operation of the railway. Train movement control. So we're looking at assisting the driver with some form of either connected driver advisory system or automatic train operation. These provide links to the traffic management system such that we can use the infrastructure effectively and as efficiently as possible. Also making sure that we pay appropriate knowledge to the sustainability argument, reducing energy usage wherever possible. All of this, though, is really built upon a foundation of data and being able to transport that data to the right people at the right time effectively. So telecommunications and data is key to this, and also, of course, through remote condition monitoring, intelligent infrastructure, being able to understand how our assets are performing. So that's basically where we see the system at the moment in relation to future CCS systems. So we have been on the journey for the System Authority for almost 3 years now. So it was a concept first sort of thought about recognizing that Network Rail was getting geared up to go into the delivery phase. And how were we going to assure this and make sure there was independence between the delivery teams of Network Rail and also of the industry, and making sure there's proper assurance from an industry perspective. So when this is first started in, say, July 2017, we weren't even quite sure what the term System Authority meant, and I'll come on to it on the next slide. So we actually tried to engage with industry to explain what the problem statement we were trying to solve, and that took a lot of people convincing that there was actually a problem, and we went through many iterations on that. And having then determined what we believed was an agreed problem statement, we then went through a number of iterations with our industry colleagues to make sure that we could reflect their concerns and opportunities they saw with such an arrangement. And eventually we got to a position in March, April 2018, where we thought it was sufficient to go back to the technical leadership group, who are our governance group, to say we have a plan now. We think this is where we want to be. This is where the industry thinks we want to be as well. So can we have a soft start? And basically, since March 2018, we have been fully operational, and we have been learning, and obviously as we go along. I think we're now into position now over the last sort of 4 to 6 months where we've now got a system that's up and running, and we'll feel comfortable that it can deliver on behalf of industry, and therefore we can take that forward. So I mentioned before, we actually wanted to understand what the role of the system authority was. And even you might have seen a lot in Paul's last presentation, he mentioned that Siemens were the technical authority for East Coast. So what's the difference between a system authority and a technical authority? You have some people call themselves a design authority. So all those various phrases were used within the industry. And we thought one of the first things that we can do actually is just define what those definitions are. And a lot of this learning came from experiences that were encountered on Thameslink. So we concluded that the system authority actually was the main body that links all the duty holders together. So for instance, this is a typical ETCS program where when you have a look at it, who delivers what, you can see if the infrastructure manager is making the change, then effectively they are responsible, accountable for delivering the integrated railway at the end of their project. However, other duty holders such as Paul Boyle and the train operators are responsible for delivering their part of change, but they must make sure it all fits together to be able to form a comprehensive system that the system users can use. So this really formed the heart of how we have approached this, looking at how would you get this system to be used, who's actually accountable for what, and making sure all the linkages are in place. And where you can see the system authority sits is that really is the glue in the middle there to try and link these two things together through the use of standards, procedures, and processes. So that's really where we started, and that's where the term system authority fits within the industry arrangements. This is quite an old slide here. You can see we've got Network Rail IP in there. Of course, that doesn't exist, but we've modified one later on anyway. What really came out of the analysis for us was that very much concern within the industry that as working within Network Rail, that basically there was a possibility that we would be a native and support Network Rail in many of our activities compared to the whole industry, and that was not what we wanted to do. So one of the first things we actually did was actually set out some behavioural objectives. And they're sort of identified there. And perhaps the crucial one there is whole industry and whole system approach. So we actually measure ourselves about producing activities and resolving issues from an industry perspective and not just a Network Rail. And one of the things that anybody turns up to our meetings, we always ask at the end of the meetings, have we been operating on respect to the whole industry and taking a whole system approach. Quite clearly, we're also looking at whole life cost realization. So again, if there is an issue, how do we actually go about trying to approach resolving that issue? And we've taken a very, very strong line here saying, we'll look at it from a whole life cost issue basis. Not necessarily worrying about upfront where the costs lie to begin with, but understanding it from a whole industry perspective first. Once we have made a recommendation, then we would expect that to go through normal industry channels to look at how actual fact that's going to be realised. And then quite clearly, one of the key issues that we have to have is paramount, is to make sure that whatever we do fits within the safety and security framework. And the intent is obviously through some of the stuff that Nick has said and Paul, is to actually increase both safety and security across the network. So, having now got the behavioural objectives, we then thought we needed to look at alignment what our delivery objectives were. And part of this was alignment of DR processes of the rail technical strategy that industry has produced. System-wide support to the digital railway programme, so assuring and validating the outputs from the digital railway programme to ensure that they align with the behavioural objectives. System-wide support to DR deployments, such as East Coast Delivery Project. System-wide support to operational DR systems, so we're actually supporting Cambrian and Thameslink as we speak. And support to the DR Programme Board, which is now the Industry Council, providing technical leadership governance to that group to make sure that any decisions taken on behalf of Digital Railway Programme are actually aligned with the right technical solutions. So hopefully that provides us where we believe we are going delivery objectives. So having sort of boiled that down, those requirements down, we came to the conclusion there needed to be sort of 5 individual functions within the system authority. I'll start with the guiding body, and effectively this is a function that's sort of trying to pull together the technical strategy for the future, recognising there's a lot of activities already going on within the industry, and I'll show you in a later slide how we pull that together. The assurance function, that function provides second line defence for all the system engineering deliverables via the Digital Railway Programme, and manages third line defence where that's appropriate. Configuration management, this is a software system. There are sort of limits as to, in some respects, what systems can talk to other systems, and it's getting more and more important now that we actually manage the configuration of the railway to ensure that we don't have incompatibilities between various system components. Issues management, I'll come on to a little bit later, but basically we are producing new standards for this business change. We've made best endeavours to get them right first time, but we know there's going to be issues as we roll these out through programs such as Paul's, and to make sure we have a rapid response that we can look at the issue and come up and provide industry guidance where necessary. And before that, though, you'd obviously need a set of requirements, and effectively we're managing that on behalf of industry prior to them being transferred to RSSB and group standards. So the government for a system authority at the moment, it was planned such that Digital Railway Programme was initially seen as a short-term change programme at a generic level, and therefore that's seen on the left-hand side of that slide there, reporting into the DR Industry Council. Should the DR programme change over the time, the system authority bit we envisage as being able to stay stable, and you can see there that the industry steering group of the Digital Railway System Authority reports up into the technical leadership group, and then eventually to RDG Planning and Oversight Group. Hence, very much seen as a cross-industry arrangement rather than going through Network Rail governance per se. And you can see there's an independent group that we work with, which is the system review body that actually also checks what we do, and that feeds into the Industry Standards Coordination Committee and up into our RSSB board. So that's basically how we fit, and we have 3 main groups that report into the System Authority: Requirements, Issues Management and Configuration Group, the Guiding Body Group, and the Assurance Steering Group, matching the functions that we saw earlier. One of the things that's critical is how do we actually operate, and how do we actually get things to actually work. If you actually think about the actual output we were looking for, is in service operation. But what we've got on the left-hand side is a load of requirements that come in from the TSIs, the railway group standards, the operational concepts, the business requirements, and the need for business change. So therefore, we have to translate the left-hand side through a process to make sure it can go safely into service. So the only people who can put that into service are the duty holders. So in the case of ETCS, that would be the TOCs, FOCs, and Network Rail routes, as shown in the blue there. But as part of that process, you also need to demonstrate that you actually are interoperable for those particular components that need to be so, and therefore there is an authorization to place into service, and that's done by the project entities, which typically would be for rolling stock, the Roscoes or the Fox, and for Network Rail it'd be the route delivery partner, which is as Paul mentioned. So what we're trying to do is actually what we are doing is actually setting up a set of technical requirements such that this is consistent across the whole of the UK. That helps the business change because by having consistent training, consistent competency assessments, and therefore the driver experience in Aberdeen would be the same, say, at Exeter. It's very, very standard. So basically, the next area, the Digital Railway System Requirements and Integration team are producing this set of high-level generic requirements. We're validating them before passing them on to the various entities to deliver. What we're trying to do is put the assurance up front, such that when we hand over those requirements, we're very confident that they are fit for purpose, albeit, as I mentioned before, we do recognise that there may be feedback from experience. So we are looking at doing some generic testing and simulation up front, and we are looking at an independent board to validate what we're doing and provide recommendations to those duty holders that the Digital Railway Programme, the Digital Railway System Authority, has followed due process, and there is evidence to say that the system is safe and secure before the duty holders put it into use. Eventually, after we've done this on a couple of projects like East Coast and TransPennine, we believe those requirements will be fairly well used and good background. Therefore, at that time, we believe we will make a recommendation to RSSB to turn them into RSSB standards, and they will then become RSSB standards as we generally produce them. And this is basically the flow chart that we're looking at. So it's very clear here. What we're trying to do now is work with industry to recognise that this is the standard process. I've copied this actually from RSSB, so and enhanced it slightly. So this process needs to be followed time and time again. And what we're trying to do is actually make sure this is as efficient as possible. And again, it fits within that previous slide. If we can actually determine the requirements up front, and a lot of that assurance has to be done once only, and not multiple times by each project. That way, of course, then you get standardization across the network as well. Lastly, I mentioned the guiding body, and just to try and give you a little bit of a landscape of what the guiding body is trying to do. There's lots of initiatives going on at the moment. You'll hear later on on Thursday about Target 190. You'll hear about what UKRIN are doing. You'll hear about Shift to Rail. You'll hear other expressions such as RCA, Reference CCS Architecture, Acora, and we know that things such as the telecom systems need to migrate from existing GSMR over to FRMCS. So all this is working at the moment. They're not all interconnected. So there's various initiatives going on in various sectors, and what the guiding body is trying to do is to pull all these together such that we can aim all these in the same similar direction, and therefore get maximum benefit from collaboration between these parties to the benefit of GB and its rail network, passengers and freight. So the key to this is the coordination of these activities is to provide an industry capability roadmap, which has clear lines of sight to industry benefits, and Pat McFadden will be describing that as he leads the guiding body group for me. So hopefully it shows you that what we're trying to do in the guiding body here is not actually do the work, we're just trying to make sure that all the various elements are aware of each other's activities, and therefore they're all working together in a similar direction. And just as an aside, we have now got Target 190, UKRIN, and the sector deal all working in harmony now on looking at the digital twin for the DTCS railway. And that's me.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. That's a really important look at the health of the programme. Great as the benefits are of moving to a regional railway, of course it throws up the potential for building a complete chimera of different mismatched systems and so on around the country. So we've absolutely got to keep a continuity there. So thank you very much for that. Still time, folks, to get a couple of questions in if you're quick. Now we move on to an elevator pitch. So 5 minutes for an SME to share some of the innovative work that they're doing in or around this project. And I'm really pleased to introduce a real favourite of Ria and everyone present, I'm sure, Lucy Pryor, who's going to speak up in her role as Business Engagement Director of 3 Squared, which is just one of your many roles, Lucy, in the industry. So I'll pass over to you, Lucy, if you're ready to go.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And I promise, folks, I didn't even pay him to say that. So good afternoon, everyone. After that kind introduction from Richard, I'm here completely with my business engagement hat on for 3 Squared. We are an SME based in the north in the digital and tech space. So we tick an awful lot of boxes when we hark back to the sector deal and the rail supply group. And I'm really, really proud of that. But what I want to do today is, rather than do a straightforward elevator pitch, because I've got that little bit extra time, I've got a whole 5 minutes to speak with you. I want to discuss what I think Digital Railway, well, what we think, I should say, organisationally, what we believe Digital Railway actually is, and how we can help formulate, support, and help Network Rail and all stakeholders deliver that. So Digital Railway, it's not just, we know we've had amazing technical presentations just there, it's not just about the technical product, it's not just about the signalling, for example, the change of technology in the cab, the stuff that's been taken down from line side. It's actually about that whole business change, and I think every single one of the speakers before me has mentioned that need for business change. And for us, that's what we're, as far as we're concerned, that's what we're helping doing. The people, so whether it's line side workers, whether it's LOMs and MOMs, whether it's drivers, dispatch staff, it's the people who are carrying out the tasks that are needed to actually deliver Digital Railway, who we believe are at the heart of everything we do. And that in turn helps us help them put the passenger and the freight commodity first. So for us, RailSmart, which is our suite of software services and supporting programs that we work with across industry, it's all about enabling business change, enabling readiness for huge tectonic shifts such as Digital Railway, and helping with the training as well. Every single person has also mentioned that need for training and skills in one guise or another, and that's a huge part of what we do. So Andrew just then talked about consistent competency assessments. Consistency in competency and consistency in how we work with people and how we enable people to carry out their day jobs is what is going to help us achieve a regional railway nationally and vice versa. Richard, you mentioned that it's perhaps 3 times harder to deliver business change than it is technical change. Again, that goes back to why we want to work really hard with the people. So it's all about that operational excellence. How can you use technology to achieve that, and how can you embed that? So as an example of that, and to again echo part of Nick's presentation up front, we are helping the industry put the right data in the right place, making it accessible and understandable. Examples of that are, for example, we're working with North Western Central Route right now in rolling out our competency management system, and that whole user-centric design, accessible design, understanding the business need and the user's need before you impose change upon them is why we believe we've been successful. So as an example, within the first 2 weeks of rolling EDS, which is our competency management system, within the first 2 weeks of rolling that out on NWNC, we had about 3/4 of the staff uptake on that straight away. Week on week since that has been taking place, we've seen increased usage, increased interactions, increased development support plans, and really crucially, an increase in the incidents logged. Now, that's not to say that, oh, we've uncovered a whole load more incidents. But what it is, it's that data-driven feedback. By enabling frontline staff to understand these platforms and use them and access the data themselves, it also enables them to pass the data back to the right people to make those informed decisions, whether we're talking about asset management, incident recording, remote condition monitoring. Again, it's all around that using, tracking, positioning, and presenting the right data to the right people. That data-driven feedback continuum, it is crucial. And I mean, going back to the feedback that we've had on rolling out EDS, one of the Network Rail senior guys even said that the EDS is becoming pivotal in creating a safer railway. So that does sound awfully soapbox sales spiel about EDS. But really what I'm really trying to drive home is the fact that it's the people and it's the data. How do we intertwine those two really crucial elements and help make the optimized support for both of them? We also heard about white space, so helping use gaps, whether it's in network capacity, whatever it may be. So for example, we're working on the VSTP, the Very Short-Term Planning Dynamic Capacity Project. So there again, we want to help the entire network make best use of that white space. How can we help one another? And also there was a reference to trespass. And again, that's not just about preventing trespass, but understand why it's happening in the first place. So we've conducted a huge piece of research on behalf of RSSB, but we've researched alongside Network Rail, Tox and Fox and the BTP. And again, it's understanding that root cause. So it might not necessarily mean we can help stop, I don't know, ASBOs tagging railway bridges, but if we can help understand where the weaknesses in the network are, where the access points are, for example, what the reasons are behind this, again, it's taking gaps of those white spaces and using them for industry good. So going right back to the beginning of the presentation, I see Richard's there, so I'm guessing my 5 minutes are nearly up. That explicit commitment to making the unusual business as usual, that's what we're all about. So for us, it's data, it's people. It's not just about flogging software systems, it's helping drive positive business change and taking people on that journey with us. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lucy. Making the unusual the usual. That's a pretty good way forward, I think. Right, so we've got time for a Q&A session. We can do some one-to-ones and some panel questions. So speakers, if you can all open your cameras again, please, and your microphones, so we can take part in the dialogue. I'm going to start off with a question really for Andrew, I think, although Nick may have an opinion, but I think it's an Andrew type question. Andrew, a couple of people have mentioned EU links. And if I understand correctly, that's the next generation of systems. What's the relationship between digital railway and EU links?
Yeah, EU links is standard protocol interfaces between the signalling system and equipment such as point machines, level crossings, RBCs and traffic management systems. We've been part of the EU-Links consortium. I don't want to take too much away from some of the presentations later on in the week, but I know that as part of T190, EU-Links features quite heavily in that concept. And we are looking at building EU-Links into the procurement contracts from about 2024 onwards. So definitely we've been right in there helping to develop the EU-Link standards. We think they're now sufficiently at a mature stage such that we can start adopting them now. And that provides a very useful thing for both suppliers in terms of standardization and for Network Rail's whole life management of its assets. Okay,
that's great. Thank you very much, Andrew. Something I think we address.
Okay, on Wednesday, hopefully that will be presented. So I'm just making a bit of a pitch there for Wednesday's activity.
Yeah, we're doing our best to cover the project from all sides, from all angles, and I think you're right. Wednesday will let us have a look into the future. We're cracking on doing our first delivery, but what is the future going to look like beyond that? Okay, so a question I think for Nick. Unless Nick, did you want to make a comment on that?
I was just, if I may, I was just going to say, I think the critical thing there, though, is that we make the project very specific. Some people would say it's too vague and it doesn't bring enough clarity. So I think that's something that we absolutely have to bring, is absolute clarity, what it means and how we can turn that then into deliverables that we can actually implement in the digitalization that we're talking about.
Yeah, I completely agree that implementation is absolutely key. And I think we're going to learn a lot of lessons from the implementation of digital railway in the next year or two, which hopefully copy across to other things as well. So if we could carry on with yourself, Nick, and again on this issue of change management and industry readiness, clearly it's at least as big a challenge as the technology, and probably bigger. How does Network Services, with its operations focus, support the regions in bringing these issues together to assure the implementation?
Okay, I think I'd start from the premise that says the first time I went to one of our rail operation centres, to actually first-hand witness the use of things like traffic management, one was a bit surprised at the lack of utilisation of the tool itself. So then you start to delve into why, and what you end up finding, of course, is that we really haven't done the change management piece at all well, and that replicates itself across many areas, and my own background in Australia was the same, and we're therefore trying to put new tools onto people without helping them in moving from maybe you're talking about using levers and points to suddenly using VDUs, and then the next minute using traffic management, ARS, DRS, and all those sort of things, and actually we haven't helped people on that transition. So a critical part of our operational program delivery team under Andy Jones is around, one of the teams under there is around change management, because if we don't address the change management piece robustly and properly and full on, we will have other things like I referenced in my words. We'll have a number of tools that we implement and they're sort of on the shelf, and I think that's critical.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can assure you that isn't a new problem. In a project I did more than 15 years ago, I spent a day in what was then an IECC control centre and found exactly the same thing, that the people who were modifying the railway were not getting across the people who are going to operate it what they were supposed to do with that modification, what everybody thought the end outcome was going to be. Utterly crazy, really. So I think you're picking up a legacy problem, but everybody's behind you in terms of solving it.
Yeah, and we'll build it into, we're creating the network operating strategy, and a critical part of that is how you bring all these tools together and how you actually make them implementable and roll outable. And part of that we're doing with the Wales and Western region at the moment is around how you take traffic management that has been used and implemented and how we absolutely roll it out so it gets huge benefit. To do that, you've clearly got to link it to crew and stock, because if you want to use those modern tools to make real passenger and freight benefit, they've got to link, and that's where this data transmission and common formats and all are so utterly important to allow them to link to multi-industry parts. Yeah,
and that's been so hard with such a fragmented industry. It doesn't help, but as you say, maybe we're at the dawn of a unique opportunity here to actually do things in a more integrated way.
Yep.
Really a question I want to point at Paul, if I can, please, Paul. Luke Comber asks about when you're modelling, are you looking at the environmental benefits of implementation of ETCS? In other words, we're not having a stop-start railway, we're having a slow down a bit, speed up a bit railway.
Yeah, certainly, and we're just scoping out a piece of work where we look at the scenarios run again, but with an aim of getting the environmental and the carbon effect of the scenarios as well. What we did, and it was some time limitations when we were doing them, we had a cut-off point, but we didn't model them fully getting back to line speed and things like that. So it was frozen at a point to give a snapshot. And so we're going to rerun them shortly, which will look at the environmental impact of them typical scenarios, which to give you an indication, a class 91 uses 73 kilowatt hours per minute every minute that power control is open. And so there is massive environmental benefits in this, and there's all the things that industry challenge in the environmental challenge that is there for the industry. We know that there's some big wins in here for this, for digital and ETCS.
Okay, that's something we mustn't miss out on in the business case. Often it's very hard-nosed, and we don't necessarily take into account. Lucy, you've got your hand up there.
No, I was just reacting to a tweet, actually. Sorry, a tweet about this conference.
I'm happy to put my
honest at least.
Sorry, everyone.
I'm struggling a bit in that I've got a panel of pain on the screen, which is blotting you out, Lucy. I do apologise. Right, okay. Working with CDAS, so driver advisory and connected driver advisory systems. Is there a crossover? Can the two work together? Nick, what's your take on that?
The answer is absolutely yes. I mean, you heard me a minute ago talking about traffic management and the lead for those systems to link to crew and stock. That also means, though, that we need to be able to link it to driver advisory systems. Without that, we can't get the messages to the people that we need to do that piece. It also has clear linkages that until the drivers actually acknowledge that they've got received the message, you're unable really to put it into your other systems, which means passing the message to passengers becomes fraught. And then we get to the world where you'll see so often all the screens go blank and there is no information. And you're waiting for, in actual fact, for, at a very simple level, a signaller to make a decision about which train to put onto which diagram. He or she is waiting, though, to understand whether there's train crew and rolling stock and all those other things. And you go around on one of these crazy whirly wheels that goes nowhere. So the answer is absolutely we've got to link all these systems together, which means we really need to digitally enable. We've all got one of these anyway. It's then a matter of how you actually make that work.
Yeah, okay.
That, Richard.
Yes, Lucy, please do.
That's where I feel the supply chain is so important. So, for example, we've got relationships in pretty much each part of the East Coast Delivery Partnership, but we're obviously speaking to them not necessarily in isolation, but we have our discrete relationships. We're working with Network Rail, we're working with multiple FOX and TOCs. So we're probably privy to really salient bits of information that others could do with. And that's not just us, that's pretty much any SME within your supply chain. So I'd kind of ask Network Rail and all of its tier ones in whatever discipline, communicate as much as you can with your supply chain. And there's no knowing what information you're going to unlock, which is going to help you. That's another example of your white space, Nick. What else can we unlock for you and help sure. Make that railway national?
Yep. Do you want to respond, Nick?
Other than to say, I think we're broadly saying this. Quite honest, it's a matter though. I mean, people will have heard me when I spoke in Bristol about we need to create a virtual, vertically integrated railway. We know what's broken. We know how fragmentation and what the commercial arrangements did 25 years ago worked superbly successful, going from 5.2 million to 7.4 million journeys per year, train movements per year, and the doubling of passengers. Now we've got to get to the bit where we bring all those different pieces together to move to the next level of evolution. And that has to be done in an integrated way. And we've got to get rid of the bureaucracy that goes with that so we can do it quick and fast.
Yeah, part of what we're trying to do in System Authority, at least from a system perspective, is try and break down those barriers of making sure that, we see it from a total industry perspective and not just a individual Network Rail or train operators perspective. That really is, and I think we've been fairly successful at that at the moment. There's still some way to go, but yeah, we have to do that, and the benefits are there.
Paul, do you want to top up on that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the things that is absolutely fundamental to underpin this is consistency, and consistency in data, in systems, and requirements. What we want our drivers to see at the south end of the East Coast Main Line is the same as in the north, and so the work that the teams are doing to have that capability is absolutely key. And we need to support that, we need to get it baselined, and we need to give clarity to all of the supplier partners on them requirements. And I think that's really critical for us to have success in this area. And then linking it to Lucy's comments there, it's then about using it and using that capability, getting the benefits from it, and optimizing the benefits downstream. We're going to have to, we'll learn to walk, and then, but we certainly shouldn't be afraid of the challenges or elements of failure, because we will see elements of failure, but it's about being agile enough to respond to that and adapt it and change it. And I think that's for me is the one, let's get on the journey and but do it in that virtual organization of what is the industry.
I think another thing as well we're trying to do is actually make sure that we specify to a level that gets all those benefits we just mentioned of consistency, but does allow innovation as well within the supply market. In other words, how can you deliver that more efficiently, quickly, and get additional benefits? So So getting that is the real trick we're trying to play here, is to get those levels right. We won't get it right first time, but we are trying desperately to allow your innovation to continue.
Well, that's fantastic, everybody. We've swallowed our time, but that was a really fascinating session, really start to finish, and packed full of information, which is the whole idea, to get people up to speed. So thank you so much. I hope it's been useful to our delegates in bringing everybody up to speed on where the project is and how it's configured. Tomorrow, as you said, we'll be going on to look at the first rollout projects and putting all this into practice. So it just remains to say thank you once again to our speakers, to Nick King, Paul Boyle, Andrew Simmons and Lucy Pryor, and a special thank you to all my colleagues at RIA who are working very hard right behind this banner here behind me to make the whole thing work so seamlessly. And thanks to all our delegates for spending your time with us. I hope you found it useful, and we'll see everyone tomorrow at 2 p.m. once again. So thanks again, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Lucy.